Hello, I'm your host, Brian Callanan. State leaders are sounding the alarm on deepfakes, false political ads that are now using artificial intelligence to influence voters.
Your vote makes a difference in November, not this Tuesday.
In January, New Hampshire voters got a call from an AI-generated President Joe Biden telling them to skip the primary election.
We're really seeing just how easy it is to kind of commandeer somebody's voice or commandeer somebody's image and make them say whatever you want.
Authorities say an election deepfake has not hit Washington state yet, but they're concerned AI is the next step in a disturbing trend of political misinformation. Just last year, 4 county elections offices were targeted with envelopes containing white powder and had to evacuate.
And when we see information and deepfakes going around that sow public distrust in elections, it really stokes that fire of threats and aggressive behavior.
But state lawmakers are fighting back.
This is about protecting our democracy.
State Senate Bill 5152, passed last year, now requires campaigns to disclose when AI-generated or synthetic media is used in their commercials.
If you are going to use synthetic media in your ads, it has to be actually right there in the ad and say what it is so folks know it's not quite what you think it is.
With a presidential race and 3 statewide elections this year, the new law faces a new test.
Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it can't.
Combating deepfakes this election season. This week on City Inside Out. And welcome once again to City Inside Out. I'm Brian Callanan. I have with me some very important people to talk about this very important issue of election deepfakes. First off, we have with us Kate Starbird, the director and co-founder of the University of Washington's Center for an Informed Public. Kate, thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right. We also have with us Washington's Secretary of State, Steve Hobbs. Good to see you again, Secretary Hobbs.
Good to see you, Brian.
All right. Here we go. Secretary Hobbs, maybe I can start with you on this. You said recently this AI-generated voice pretending to be President Biden with New Hampshire voters there is just the tip of the iceberg. What sort of election threats do you think we're going to be facing in 2024? What kind of impact could they have?
Well, if we're dealing with AI, it can be a fake robocall. It can also be a teletown hall. I mean, that's not unusual for elected officials. I did it as a state senator, and you can go into this teletown hall and you can think it's the person, but it's not. I mean,
Wow.
that could definitely happen. There could be a digital ad of like my face telling you to vote on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. These are all very possible out there, and that's just the AI, not to mention all the other misinformation that's going on.
And I guess the overall impact of it and your concerns about this. What is that overarching concern?
It causes more doubts, and it causes people to lose confidence in their democracy. And unfortunately, not only are we dealing with people in our own country, we are dealing with strategic threats outside our country. And so we need to be aware of this, and hopefully programs like yours can help us.
Yeah, well, we will see what we can do. Thank you very much for that. Kate, I want to have you tell us a little bit more about what the Center for an Informed Public is all about and what you're preparing for in 2024.
Yeah, University of Washington Center for an Informed Public. We set up I think we were founded in like 2019, just in time for the pandemic and election 2020, accidentally. But our center looks to do both research to understand the problem of misinformation and disinformation, as well as education and outreach to help educate people about what these problems are and what they can do about them. And we do some policy work as well. And our mission is really to understand and address strategic misinformation and manipulation of online spaces and to support democratic discourse.
Got it. And in 2024, a big focus would be, what are your thoughts?
We're doing a lot of work around understanding and communicating about misinformation and disinformation, so intentional...
disinformation is intentional.
Intentional content that seeks to sort of undermine trust in election processes and procedures, as well as to confuse people about when and where to vote and possibly disenfranchise voters.
Got it. Well, let's try to talk about some of the answers here, maybe. And Secretary Hobbs, let's talk about this bill you requested and the state legislature passed last year, Senate Bill 5152. Washington, one of the first states to have something like this on the books, an election deepfakes law. It requires campaigns to disclose when they're using AI-generated video, let's say, synthetic video, images, or audio. How is this going to work?
So just backing up a little bit, I could see this threat coming.
Yeah.
We saw that happen in Ukraine when the Russians invaded. There was a deepfake of Zelensky. That's very aggressive, very threatening. It could happen here, and so we wanted to get ahead of this. So we ran this bill. It basically says you have to have disclosure. There's a private right of action. But to be honest with you, Brian, I would like it to be a little more stronger. I would like to hold social media companies accountable, networks accountable. Because if you're taking in money to run an ad, you should know who that person is. You should know if that's a deepfake. You should know if there was permissions involved to allow that image to be used. Well, we can try again.
Yeah, but that's kind of where the bill is sitting right now. And in terms of what it actually does, it's basically civil actions are possible if people see these things and they're not reported. Is that the way this works?
That is correct. So you can go after somebody that runs a deep fake. Now, the problem is if you had a nation-state actor doing this, it's going to be really hard to go after them, which is why we need to hold some of the social media companies accountable.
Got it. Thank you for that. Kate, I just wanted to talk about this. 2024 is going to be the first test of this, I guess, in our state. Is this going to help, or what do you think?
I mean, every little bit helps. But advertisements are only one part of the problem.
True.
A lot of the content that we're seeing that's misleading, that's outright fake or just accidentally misleading is not coming through advertisements. It's coming through just everyday people sharing content, and even things that won't even look like advertisements. They may be paid, but people are putting in there in nefarious ways. And so I think it addresses a part of the problem, but the problem is much bigger than that.
Yeah.
And in 2024, I think we've got a double-edged sword of people are beginning to recognize that there's so many misleading things out there, and that we recognize the threat, but we don't know what to do about it. And so we're just losing trust in the information space as well as in the democratic process at the same time. And our challenge is really to figure out not how to distrust everything, but figure out what we can trust and what we should trust. Yeah. And that's something that I think we're all working on.
Yes, Steve.
So one of the things that we're trying to do in this office is scan social media. So we use Logically is what we contract with. Scan social media for leading messages that are out there, the dealing with elections. And so if we find something, for example, let's say there's a message that's saying that elections are hacked.
Yeah.
Well, then we can turn around and put our own social media posts, contact the media like yourself and other news agencies, and let them know. It's like, did you know that the tabulation machines are not connected to the internet? This is not true. You cannot hack into our elections. That's the real threat right now. AI is something that it's going to happen. It's emerging, but Kate's right. What we're dealing with right now is a huge problem. 35% of Washingtonians did not trust the election, right? According to the King 5 poll last year. So trying to put that genie back in the bottle is really hard.
And if you look at it, 2020, we already had this proliferation of false and misleading claims about the election. We didn't really have the deep fakes. Now are far more sophisticated than they were in 2020. We don't need deep fakes. We got cheap fakes, and that's enough to cause a lot of issues. And so I think this is gonna be a challenge. It's good to hear that you all are trying to do something about addressing that. I think you're going to possibly hear pushback for doing that kind of activity in scanning. And I think it's good to clarify. It's good to clarify that when you mean scanning, you're not looking to call out individuals or to track people. You just want to understand what are the false claims that are spreading, so you can get your accurate information out into the world. And I think it's really important that you're able to understand what the rumors are, so election officials can get the corrective information out into the world.
Absolutely. All we're doing is looking at what's already out there in public. And because this is how it's spread. And if there's any way to just combat misinformation, disinformation with the truth, because that's basically what we're doing. We're telling people, hey, look, the tabulation machines aren't connecting to the internet. No, by the way, if you don't trust us, go to the county auditor, actually see the tabulation machine.
Right. And I think it goes beyond just voter trust in terms of the impact of this. And Kate, maybe I can start with you here. I think about this because you're a researcher, you've been grilled by Congress, you've been threatened, you've faced some legal challenges, et cetera. And I don't mean to pry over much here, but I did want to talk about this. What's this been like for you and your coworkers to be at the center of this big fight over information?
Yeah, I mean, we're at the center, but it is a big fight. And actually, if you look at some of the things that are happening this week, there's researchers across our field are getting targeted by these efforts to frame work to just understand the problem of misinformation and disinformation, to twist that into this frame of censorship, which it's not. It's absolutely like a strategic effort to redefine what censorship means, so that people like us aren't even able to help people out there in the world try to find information that is, you know, that can correct these inaccuracies. And it's been an interesting year. I feel like our team has showed a lot of courage, a lot of bravery through this. Certainly, we've talked about a chilling effect on researchers. Internally, we're not feeling that. We got students knocking on our doors to come work on things. I have students coming out of, like, they'd stepped out of school, they want to come back and do the work because they feel it's so important. And we're trying to just kind of leverage that energy and continue to work in a similar way to kind of understand what are the rumors out there and just try to help people resolve those rumors. And one of the things I want to point out is, like, rumors aren't necessarily false. You know, sometimes rumors turn out to be true. A lot of times they turn out to be false. But even when they're false, they have interesting information about what people are confused about what their fears are and those kinds of things. And if we can understand what rumors are spreading, we can help the people spreading them get that information, get that clarifying information, reduce that uncertainty and that anxiety, and hopefully not be disenfranchised.
Yeah.
One thing that Secretaries of States are doing and election officials are doing is we are giving more information out. So in the past, we've been very good about telling the voters, don't forget to vote.
Yeah.
Don't forget to put your ballot in the drop box.
Right.
Now we have to tell them, hey, don't forget to put your ballot in the drop box, but also, did you know we're part of ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center? So if you move to another state and you register there, we're going to know about it. We're going to know it when you die, so that if a ballot shows up after you're dead, we know that it's probably not your ballot.
Right.
But people don't know these things because we have taken elections for granted. We election officials have, and we need to change that.
I just wanted to follow up with the impacts here. I know Kate and her crew's been going through a lot, but think about election workers too. We had these 4 county elections offices that had to be evacuated last year. Someone sent in envelopes with white powder, 2 tested positive for the deadly drug fentanyl here. I guess, what do you have to say to election workers who are trying to do their jobs but feeling more and more pressure from this political disinformation out there?
You know, I served in the military. I still serve in the National Guard. And I served overseas during elections in Kosovo and Iraq, and our lives were being threatened. I never thought that would happen here. I equate our election workers just same as the fellow soldiers I worked with, because they're being threatened. When you're working to just separate the ballot from the envelope, that shouldn't be a security risk, right?
Right.
And now it is. And so we're trying to push some bills through the legislature, make it a Class C felony. We're trying to provide more funding for election centers to increase their physical security, increase their cybersecurity, to ensure things like we have wash stations in there, so that if white powder comes out, if it's bad, it could be fentanyl, it could be whatever. There's a way to wash that out. So we have to up our game, unfortunately, because of the threats out there.
Yeah. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk to people about how you can tell if a message or a video is a deep fake. Is it AI generated? We're going to play a little game here that your compatriots at the UW put together, and I'll try to make the guesses here as best I can. We'll show people at home what we're looking at here. So the idea is you got to click on the face that is real. And I've been looking through these, and these are kind of tough. I know these are difficult for everybody. I'm going to hazard a guess. Person on the left, can we click on that? Oh, incorrect. The person on the right is the real one. Doggone. All right, I'm going to try playing again here. All right. I think I got this. So looking at this guy on the left, he's got that little glint above his glasses there that seems to be a tell for me. So I'm going to say the person on the right is real. Did I get this right? Yes. Okay. That's one. Maybe one more. Just and I'll have you guys throw out a guess here. Any thoughts on this one? Boy, it's difficult to tell sometimes, isn't it?
This is very difficult.
Look, the ears and the teeth are usually a giveaway.
Are
But we
good
can't,
tells.
in one case, we can't see the ears and the teeth, and it's harder.
The teeth look a little almost too perfect on the left here. I'm going to say the person on the right is real. Am I close? Did I get it? Ah, doggone it. I guess I wanted to play that game
It's
with you
hard.
because it's difficult,
Yeah.
and I think the technology is changing. You were mentioning that some of the technology that your UW colleagues were using has been updated since. I mean, what's that like to try to keep up with all this technology?
Well, you know, it's almost an arms race between the technologies that are building the generative AI and the technologies that can help detect it. And, you know, generative AI has a lot of interesting uses, but it's really important for us as humans to be able to tell what's generated by generative AI and what is human generated. And right now we have very few signals about what's being you know, what's synthetic or created by these computers, and we can be misled in interesting ways. I think, you know, the legal changes and policies are going to help with that, but there's just a vast distance between the quality of this generative AI and our ability as humans to figure out what is real and what is computer generated.
Secretary Hobbs, this increasing amount of technology we're dealing with, it's a lot.
Yes, you know, being in the military, having served in military intelligence at one point, it's like the technology, you know, can be good or evil, right? And AI can certainly fits both of those molds. But the problem I face in government is having policy catch up with this technology.
Yeah.
Now, that bill that you had mentioned dealing with deepfakes, even though I couldn't get everything I wanted, it took 3 years to get that passed. And one of the issues that I ran into, not just the social media companies that had very high-paid lobbyists, but the fact that there were people out there, legislators, who felt, oh, you're infringing on a First Amendment right. This is free speech. It's like, so you have to bridge that gap. It's like, really, is it free speech that you have this generated image of me that I gave no permission to say information that's not true? That's free speech? Mm-hmm. I mean, some people feel it that way, right? Yeah. And that's a policy argument.
Right.
That's hard to overcome.
And I wanted to get into that because that policy argument turns into something, I think, a little more personal. You'll see a post out there that's incorrect, and maybe someone who posts continually incorrect information, even after people have debunked those lies or whatever else. How do you deal with that? Do you engage with that person? Do you say, hey, I'm correcting every tweet that you have out there? Because I know there's some people who are watching the show like, ooh, man, I want to do that. But is that the right approach, Kate?
Well, I started studying online rumors in about 2013. And for a couple of years on Facebook and other places, I was just like, let me try out. We studied corrections. Like, let me try out what it means to correct people in online spaces. I lost a lot of Facebook friends.
Yeah.
So it's not a good idea if you, especially with folks that you want to maintain relationships with that you're not super close with. You know, just correcting them in online spaces. How you do that and when you do that, I think, is something to really think about. If it's someone who's really close to you and you care about, don't correct them publicly. Maybe have a private conversation. Maybe an in-person conversation, and kind of talk about things and how maybe there might be other information that they could see that could help them
give them
see
a different
things,
perspective.
right?
Yeah.
If it's someone that you don't know very well, you have to think about, you're not going to correct them. They're going to anchor in what they thought before, and you're just going to make them mad. You're actually correcting their audiences. You're correcting that information for their audiences. So if you approach it in that way, think about how you do this in a respectful way that's more about getting their audiences to be able to see this alternative viewpoint that is a correction. And we've actually made some progress with some of our researchers studying these truth queries where you don't actually even say you're wrong. You just ask a question, oh, where did you get that information? And how do you know that? And that can be the beginning of a conversation that puts some doubt in the thread for other people to see. So there's those, if you're gonna do it in a nuanced way and with kind of empathy. We all have shared something that's false accidentally online. And so when you're correcting someone, have that empathy as well.
All right, well, it sounds like Kate solved the internet here, Secretary Hobbs. Can you tell me what your office is doing or what your approach is when you see these continual lies?
Sure, we don't engage because they'll just tend to dig in. So what we do is we see what the trends are, right? So I gave you that example. We see these messages out. So it's what's trending is, again, people hacking the internet or something. Hacking an election. So then we know, we will put out messages. We're not directing at those people, but we're putting out a general message. We're contacting the media. We're letting people know, hey, That's not true. And depending on the organization or the person, if they have a lot of influence, maybe it's a chance to reach out and go, hey, Kate, you brought it up. It's great. Where did you get this information? I'd love to be able to research this and analyze it. You know, I don't want the fraudulent election, so you know, let me try to help you. And in the meantime, love for you to come down, check out the county auditor, and see what they're doing, right? And that's the way you approach it, because when you attack somebody on their messaging, you're almost attacking their personality, right? You're attacking their psyche. Right. That's why people dig in. And so the way to counter it is give people more information.
Is there a way to be proactive? I mean, that's very reactive to a message that's out there. I'm hoping that programs like this can be part of the proactive piece of it. But is there another way to act proactively to try to cut that off from before it starts? What do you got?
One of the things we've been doing is sort of studying past trends, specifically around election processes and results, past trends of rumors and conspiracy theories, to kind of see, you know, what kinds of things have been out there before, because it turns out that this year's conspiracy theories are going to look a lot like last year's, because there's a lot of repetition of those kinds of things. And also to think about the parts of the election process that cause confusion, that have been targeted for false claims before. And then proactively think of, like, what kind of information do we need to stage to get ready to, you know, either very quickly correct falsehoods, or even in advance help people really see the layers of security in the process that are going to counter these things that are going to show up. So we've been trying to kind of do that work. We've talked to some election officials and just kind of gotten an idea of what might help. And I think, you know, being a little proactive of what people might expect, and we call pre-bunking different kinds of narratives that we expect, and really building, we have to see all these like frames of election fraud and these kinds of things, really, but like instead of debunking every little thing, how do you build like a better understanding of election security and let people really know how what those layers are?
And Secretary Hobbs, just going to follow up on that, some thoughts about being proactive. Can you prevent something like that robocall from President Biden happening here? Or I'm just trying to figure out what to do.
Can't prevent it from coming out, but as I tell people, the best way to combat this is with the truth and getting the word out. And so that's why we have totally shifted the way we've put the messages out about elections. Again, it can't be just about reminding people to vote. It's about telling them the voting process. Telling them things about just, you know, like ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, that we verify every signature. Those things that we have taken for granted. We have put out $1.2 million of you know, public information that we did in 22 and then 23, and then we're going to continue on, because we have to do that now. We have to try to get ahead of this. And not only is it the high level through TV ads, radio ads, but it's at the grassroots level. It's going out to communities of color, immigrant communities, in their language so that they understand it, because they are also vulnerable to mis and disinformation.
Great point. I got about a minute to spare on this, but social media companies, have they been helpful here? Have they been interactive with you at all? Secretary Hobbs?
They're a little bit, they're polarized right now, because they're you know, they're driven by money, and so they're trying to get market share. We do have communications with them, mostly with Facebook, not really with X. I'd love to work with them. Because if we see something that could be a foreign actor, you know, we probably would tell them if we saw that. Now, luckily, we're doing a lot of work with Homeland Security, the FBI, and so, you know, we tell them if we suspect something. Usually, they find it before we do. But I'd like to have more cooperation with them, and especially getting a bill through that it has more teeth in it.
Right, Kate, what's it been like dealing with the social media companies?
Well, I think if you look at some of the, there's been a politicization of the efforts to stop mis and disinformation about elections. And that politicization has, for various reasons, you know, caused the social media companies to back away even from things they were doing in 2020 to try to address mis and disinformation about elections. And I think they feel really hesitant to communicate with government, to even communicate with academic researchers. I would say my inbox used to be full of so much outreach from those companies, I couldn't possibly keep up with it. And now it's just not happening. Additionally, the social media ecosystem is far more fragmented than it was 4 years ago. There's so many different so many different platforms out there, whether it's TikTok, Telegram, X, Facebook, YouTube, there's just so many. And so that kind of communication between all the local and state election officials and all the different platforms is just a real messy space, especially when just the act of communicating is politicized and called, accusations of censorship get leveraged just for those folks to communicate to each other.
Thank you for all this. I need to wrap up, and I can give you about a minute. Kate, I just wanted to give some final thoughts to voters. I don't want this program to scare anybody. I know you don't want to do that either, but hopefully you open eyes for people to the potential deepfakes that are out there for the elections ahead. What do you want to leave voters with?
Well, I think it's really important that we don't, lose our sense of agency in the world, and I really think it's important that we don't just lose trust in all information and back away from these spaces. The real quest is, like, how do we engage thoughtfully on social media and in other conversations as well, but how do we engage thoughtfully in social media? And one of the things I tell people to do is, first of all, there's the SIFT method. So that is a set of kind of easy steps that you can take to be able to kind of verify that what you're seeing is accurate. And the second one I just want to tune in is, like, often when we're manipulated, when we start to share misinformation, it's not that someone's tricked us up here, it's that we've been activated emotionally. So really, one of the first things I tell people to do is tune into how information makes you feel emotionally. And if you feel like you're angry, you're mad, you're ready to spike the political football, maybe step back and look for that flag on the field, that misinformation flag on the field. Really I think that tuning into emotions is almost more important than thinking about all the rules of checking whether something's a deepfake or not.
Thank you. Some final thoughts here, Secretary.
Oh, Kate brought good points there, but additionally, I would say pause, right? You see a social media post, maybe verify it. Who is this person that's sending it to you? Do you know this person? And don't share it immediately, right? So if you do those things, well, I tell you, maybe we can lower the amount of mis and disinformation that's out there if just people would pause.
Okay, I am hoping very much for that. Thank you both for joining me, and we will be right back. What are people saying on social media about deepfakes and the 2024 elections? One person writes, "The rise of deepfakes is a concerning trend. It's important to stay informed and not let fear dictate our perception of this technology." Another person comments, "The bad side of AI needs to be regulated. Unfortunately, regulators are lagging behind, and windows to bring in effective regulations are closing fast." We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on social media. Great to have that input. Thank you very much for your input, too. We will see you next time on City Inside Out.